Manly Hall official, is glad to produce, publish and offer. Nature of energy and the lotus of the law. Dear friend, few authentic fragments have descended to us of the words of Pythagoras. Justin Martyr has preserved the following little-known quotation from the Samian sage. God is one. He is not, as some think, without the world, but within it, and entire in its entirety. He sees all that becomes, forms all immortal beings, is the author of their powers and performances, the origin of all things, the light of heaven, the Father, the intelligence, the soul of all beings, the mover of all spheres. The fifth and sixth departments of metaphysics deal particularly with God as the mover of all spheres, the last attribute bestowed upon deity by Pythagoras in the above definition. Therefore, this lesson will be devoted to the nature of energy and the nature of creation, or the manifestation of energy in works. Modern science, in its effort to escape from the overshadowing influence of theology, has built a barrier of terminology between itself and the old mystical teachings. Although it has coined new words for old ideas, it has not been able, in any essential particular, to change the substance of these ideas, nor has science been able to substitute for the ancient theologies any more adequate explanation of universal cause, purpose, or destiny. Thus, a scientist may reject the Christian Trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost as imaginary personalities, yet in the face of this rejection, he postulates consciousness, intelligence, and force as the foundations of existence, thus remaining a true Trinitarian, consoling his prejudice with words alone. The ancient philosophers affirmed the material universe to be suspended from the third aspect of the divine nature. This third aspect they denominated the demiurgus, the cosmocrator, the artificer, the father of the builders. The Greeks called him Zeus, and the Latins, Jupiter. Thus, platonically speaking, the material universe is deity in the aspect of energy or action. The modern scholar has relegated Jupiter Pan, the god of unfolding nature, to the limbo, substituting therefore the neutral term energy. The principle remains unchanged. We have gained nothing by the new word, in fact, we have lost. Energy as Zeus was not only a subject for study but also one for veneration. The divine quality which the ancient theologians discovered in all parts of nature has been destroyed by the modern attitude towards learning. Thus, energy is God with its divinity and intelligence left out and only its force remaining. The first step in rescuing the metaphysical tradition is, therefore, the re-establishment of the divine principle in substance and behind activity. Energy is now defined as inherent power, whereas in ancient times it was defined as inherent divinity. Energy is further defined as the capacity for acting, thus, it is the mover of the orphix. Energy is the root of force, even as it is the support of phenomenal life. A study of energy involves two issues, its origin and its use. The universe is composed of the substance of being, is established by and in the substance of wisdom, and is supported by and in the substance of force. Thus, energy is the foundation of the whole material universe, the pedestal which upholds the world. In India, it is indeed Vishnu who, in the form of the strong animal, the boar, elevates creation upon his tusks. If you're enjoying this video and finding value in the content, we kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. A large portion of our listeners and viewers haven't subscribed yet, and by doing so, you'll help us grow and continue bringing you more high-quality audiobooks. Your support means a lot to us, and it's just one click away. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay connected and never miss out on our latest releases. In the Kabbalah, the tree of life consists of 3 major trunks from which emanate numerous branches. These trunks are called wisdom, strength, and beauty, and by them, creation is maintained. It is from these 3 trunks that Christendom has derived its triad of moral virtues: faith, hope, and charity. Faith is the highest form of wisdom, hope the noblest aspect of strength, and charity is moral beauty. The Pythagoreans also had a triad of being, life, and light, which supported their world order. To them, the world issued from the principle of light, for which reason Pythagoras declared the body of God to be composed of light. Light is the most perfect of all forms, for in it, the energy principle is the least obscured by material elements. We find reference to this thought in the 1st chapter of John. In the beginning was the Word. By the word, logos, or fiat, is inferred deity in its attribute of energy or force. John then says of God, "In him was life, and the life was the light of men." Thus, the Gospel establishes the Pythagorean foundation: God or being, life, and light. Though science may involve the issue by developing an elaborate terminology by which simple truths become obscured, the spiritual foundations of the world remain unmoved. The well-being of each individual depends upon his ability to rescue spiritual values from their present obscuration and to live in accordance with these values. The ancients, in explaining the mystery of what we call energy, which to them was an emanation from divine beings, classified these forces under several headings. 1. Intellectual energy emanates from the zodiac and forms the body of Zeus, or the world god. Plato divided this energy into 2 aspects: intelligible intellect, pure knowing, and intellectual intellect, thinking from external stimulus. 2. Psychical energy emanates from the planets. This energy is both moral and sensory, arising from planetary influences. 3. Vital energy originates from the sun, forming the nourishment that supports all physical organisms. This is the basis of the modern vitamin theory. 4. Corruptive energy originates from the moon and brings the principle of decay, preventing stagnation in vital currents. 5. Seminal energy arises from the earth and ensures fertility and propagation. Thus, by philosophy, we come to know that we live, move, and have our being in a sea of divine energy, supported by infinite wisdom and nourished by infinite life. Energy is not only the opportunity to act but also the opportunity to be. Its proper use builds character, while its perversion leads to destruction. The old mystery schools taught that true religion consisted of the right use of energy and opportunity. Life was regarded as a sacred force, and its proper use was a spiritual virtue. The purpose of energy is to create, preserve, and beautify. Its proper use increases the amount of manifested good. The philosopher, realizing the energies of life to be the very bodies and souls of the gods, endeavors to use every element of his existence to produce some permanent and constructive effect. The wasting, misuse, or abuse of energy is a sacrilege of which no wise man wishes to be guilty. By destroying the moral values of action and reducing the universal plan to a mechanistic program, science removes the spiritual equation in action. Deprived of its noblest part, action loses its virtue and becomes a contributing cause of the world's suffering. No one who sincerely understands the divine factors in life can be guilty of those evil deeds by which civilization is being destroyed. Energy is necessary for both constructive and destructive motion. Creation comes into being through activated motion. Our ambitions, hopes, and desires are the basis of the institutions we build. Life is a continuous sacrament. We live off the divine sustenance, and thus our lives should be divinely inspired, worthy of the spiritual force that supports them. Yours sincerely. Los Angeles, California. The Lotus of the Law. An Allegory. By Manly P. Hall. Complimentary with monthly letter. Phoenix Press, Los Angeles, California. An Allegory. The simple one had spent the day in the woods. The gathering shadows were falling in the vast valleys. The sun hung like a globe of blazing copper upon the peaks of the Jade Mountains. Lou bent his back to a great bundle of faggots and, leaning heavily upon a crooked stick, prepared to descend the narrow path that led downward into the gorge below. Along a slanting amber beam from the setting sun, stroked like a golden road across the sky, gilding with its glow a verdant hillock where a rushing stream from the mountain fell in cascades to a pool below. A sweet song sounded from the peaks, to be echoed and re-echoed from the depths. The song seemed to come from the sun, and as Lou gazed into the copper light, he saw the figure of a man walking slowly down the road of light. As the figure came closer, Lou perceived it to be a Buddhist monk with flowing robes and a shaven head. The monk carried in his hands a small musical instrument resembling a lute, and Lou heard the words of an ancient Buddhist chant drifting to him on the breath of the evening. Down the pathway of the sunbeam moved the monk in his yellow robes until at last he placed his foot upon the grassy hillock by the side of the waterfall. Seating himself upon the carpet of short green grass, the monk gathered his robes about him and, with the lute across his knees, chanted the slokas of the ancient law. Lou hastened down the mountain, his bundle of faggots forgotten. He prostrated himself before the elder of the village. The elder told his prince, and it was thus that the emperor came to know. A colorful procession moved slowly along the narrow path which wound through the depths of the gloomy gorge. First came gaily caparisoned knights in bamboo armor, their small shaggy horses trapped with purple and gold brocade. Then followed yeomen, armed with longbows and wearing corselets of elephant hide studded with gilded bosses. Behind them marched in solemn step princes of the state in flowing robes of green and saffron, each with a tablet of ivory and gold threads braided in his queue. Next came 12 youths, musicians of the court, playing soft sweet music upon amber flutes and tinkling little bells of jade. In the midst of this proud company moved a glorious palanquin of scarlet lacquer, borne by long handles upon the shoulders of 20 pages who marched in rhythm to the jade-stone bells. The palanquin was hung with countless curtains of the sheerest and most diaphanous silk. In the midst of these gauzy billows, upon a throne of jewels bearing a scepter of purest lapis lazuli, sat the Emperor of China, Son of Heaven, the living glory of the ages. Behind his serene augustness walked the privy councillors, the ministers extraordinary, the mandarins, and a great body of the powerful and the learned wearing black hats with coral buttons. Lastly, there were more yeomen and more knights and a concourse of peoples from the countryside who followed at a respectful distance. Pomp had come forth to meet a prophet. Word had reached the imperial ear that a man of great wisdom had come down from the sky on a ray of the setting sun and had established his hermitage in the shadows of the ancient gorge by the edge of the mountain stream. For many days the song of the Lohan had greeted the dawn, and the voice of the sweet singer of the law had mingled with the voice of the rushing waters. The emperor had traveled for many hours, and now, as the afternoon sun hung upon the ragged peaks of the Jade Mountains, the ravine widened, and the path led into a pleasant glade fringed with gnarled trees and great boulders that in some remote age had crashed from the cliffs above. The procession halted, the musicians ceased their playing, the journey was ended. A thin waterfall descended from a great height over fantastic rocks and scattered a mist upon the small pool below. In the shallows of the pool played carp of brilliant hue, and over its cool surface hung purple dragonflies. Beside the pool, on a cushion of soft grass which grew on an outcropping of disintegrating rock, sat an ancient man wrapped in the folds of a voluminous cloak. His knees were drawn up before him, and his chin rested on his folded hands. Two great dark eyes seemed to glower out from under the folds of the cape which formed a covering for his head. Before the Lohan was a narrow shelf of rock upon which stood a rare and delicate vase of white crackleware. Beside the Arhat lay his lute and his begging bowl. The palanquin was lowered to the ground, to rest on dragon's claws of teak, and the Son of Heaven stepped from his high seat and came towards the weird figure on the rock who neither moved nor spoke. His supreme augustness knelt upon the path and, striking the hard earth 3 times with his forehead, addressed the Lohan with these words: "O most exalted Father, most exquisite sage, the earth with all its treasures pays homage to the Eternal. I salute the law. I salute the Buddha. I salute the 3 jewels. I salute the 8 priceless truths. I salute one who practices perfectly the 6 paramitas. O most excellent and exalted Arhat, I salute the embodiment of the virtues and crave that I may receive from you the substance of the blessed truth. Reveal to me, O sage, the very reality of the law. Impart to me the everlasting reality by which I may accomplish the nirvana." Deep and thundering, yet most strangely sweet and melodious was the voice of the Lohan, and these were his words: "The law may not be spoken. The truth may not be enclosed in words. If you desire enlightenment, therefore, O Emperor of China, go to the edge of yonder pool where grows the white lotus. Pluck from the water a blossom, a bud, and a leaf. Bring them to me." As the Lohan spoke, 10 mandarins stepped forward to serve the emperor, but the Son of Heaven waved them all aside and rising went himself to the edge of the pool. With his gold-encrusted fingers, he plucked from the surface of the water a blossom, a bud, and a leaf. Returning, he made a profound obeisance and laid them at the feet of the Lohan. For the first time, the sage moved. With slow and rhythmic gesture, he turned back the edge of his robe, extended one long and graceful hand, and taking slowly the blossom, he placed it in the vase of crackleware. "This," he said, "is the supreme and radiant self. And this bud," he picked it up and placed it in the vase, "is your own most inward nature, O Emperor. And this," picking up the leaf, "is the earth which is given to your rulership. I have arranged these three, the blossom, the bud, and the leaf, according to the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, behold in this vase with its contents the full mystery of the law." The Lohan gathered his cloak about him once more and did not speak again, but sat gazing at the porcelain vase. The emperor gazed also, but saw only a flower, a bud, and a leaf. He understood not the mystery of the law. In the dark of evening, lit by torches, the emperor and his retinue returned to the Vermilion City. The Arhat still sat gazing upon the blossom, the bud, and the leaf. 1,000 years passed. 2 mendicants in white garments, with peach straw hats, were walking along the narrow path that led into the deep gray gorge of the Jade Mountains. They came on a pilgrimage to a most holy shrine that had been built on a little hillock by a waterfall. The pilgrims had come a great distance, they were weary and footsore, and the dust of the road was heavy upon them. At last, they reached the place where the ravine widened out, and before them rose an ancient shrine adorned with carven images of meditative sages. Steps worn deep by the feet of the faithful led up to the shrine. Upon the back of a great stone turtle stood a tablet, deep etched with ancient Chinese characters. One of the pilgrims read the tablet aloud. "Erected by His Most Serene Augustness, the Emperor of China, to mark his meeting with an Arhat of the eternal law. Upon this place, the law was revealed, but the eyes of the Emperor were not worthy to perceive it. Therefore, has this shrine been erected, that the law may be preserved, even if not comprehended." As the pilgrims turned from the tablet, they beheld a drowsy priest seated in the warm sunshine. The second pilgrim addressed him, "O Father, we have come to pay our most humble respects at this most noble and sacred shrine. Pray you, permit us to enter the sanctuary and present our incense in worship to the holy relic which it contains." The priest rose, and followed by the pilgrims, ascended the notched steps, moved the long beam in its grooves, and swung open the temple doors. The temple's interior was a place of dim twilight, faintly lighted by little oil lamps, their flickering flames reflected from numerous gilded objects. In the midst of the temple was a small marble pagoda, and in the very center of the pagoda, a golden box. This the priest opened. The box had no bottom but rested upon a narrow shelf of rock. Within the box was a vase of white porcelain, and in the vase, a blossom, a bud, and a leaf of the lotus. The priest, kneeling before a small low table, unrolled a brocaded scroll and read to the pilgrims. "The most sacred relic of this shrine is the blossom, the bud, and the leaf of the lotus which you here see in the porcelain vase. They were placed thus 1,000 years ago by an unknown Arhat who has been called the Singing Lohan. When placing these 3 parts of the lotus in this vase, the Arhat declared that the law was revealed. His words were most startlingly fulfilled, for, although 10 centuries have passed and no man has touched this vase, the flowers have neither wilted nor in any way changed. They were placed in the law. By the law, they are sustained. But if they be touched or moved in any way, they will immediately fade and die. Copyright 2025 by Manly Hall Official. Thank you for listening. Please consider to subscribe, like, and share to help the channel growth. New videos on a daily basis.